Hey, it's Friday, so that means it's time for the Rapid Fire Friday here at Illini Inquirer. And Trevor Vallese, let's hit the music. Let's get into it, man.
Question number one, given all the wild realignment news that seems to be ever developing, who else would you like to see the Big Ten add, either from the ACC or the Pac-12?
Every answer starts with Notre Dame, right? And I guess we can kind of say they're from the ACC for the purposes of this as an independent school. But that's the big one. It's the biggest fish out there. It has the potential to save the ACC in whatever capacity, or it has the potential to really continue to take this profile the Big Ten has and elevate it to another stratosphere. Like after that, it's kind of gravy, right? But I would look at Notre Dame. I would look at Washington. I would look at Oregon. I think you need a West Coast pod in some capacity out there. Those two schools would fit that. When do you try to get into the ACC? I don't know. Do you try to sneak a North Carolina or a Duke? I don't know. To me, I'd rather get Notre Dame and build a pod out west, and maybe that includes Stanford as well. But Notre Dame and then someone west: Washington, Oregon, Stanford.
Yeah, Notre Dame's the big one. I think that's what we're waiting on, whether it's a month from now or 2 years from now. I think Notre Dame is the big domino, and that the Big Ten, I mean, it's kind of I guess the fun thing to do would be to be like, who's next, right? Like, oh, this is also fun. And then you think of like an Oregon State, Washington State, or like a NC State that could be left out in the cold here. But I don't think the Big Ten has to move. And I think we always have to take a step back, and like once you add one or two, it's like, oh, they're going to get to 20, they're going to do this. That's probably going to be the case, but they don't have to. And the reason they're doing this is for money. So which of these schools left is going to bring them more money? Obviously Notre Dame does that. Does North Carolina? That's like the next school on my list. Like if I'm doing this, like North Carolina to me, given the brand that they are, maybe not with football, but it's a good school and it's a great basketball program. And the football program has had some success and still has some cachet, and it gets you into a market, as much as that matters, that is really big. Like that's a top 10 market, that Raleigh-Durham area. Like that's a big market there that Chapel Hill gets you into. But more importantly, I think it's more of a brand. I think Washington, Oregon makes sense if you want to do a pod, Joey, but do you need it? I don't know. Like those two markets make sense to me. Seattle, Portland is not that close to Eugene, but it's close enough that you can consider it that. Those make sense, but do they make any more sense than Missouri, or you know what I mean? Like, so if I'm going just by fun and not thinking about all these things, I think Notre Dame makes sense for the conference. I think Missouri and Kansas makes sense for the conference. Like when you talk about geographical footprint rivalries that they could add to this, you could have Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, Illinois. Like that's a fun thing to have there. And I just think North Carolina would be great. I just think it's a huge program, athletic department that brings a lot of cachet. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I think Miami makes sense from a lot of figures of academics, the brand that it has. I just don't know if that fits what you want. Like that football program, is that what you want to bring in, or is that SEC sitting all over it? So I would go Notre Dame, North Carolina, Missouri, and Kansas for my druthers, but I think Notre Dame, North Carolina makes sense. And I haven't mentioned Stanford, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I just don't know if it grows the pie enough for the Big Ten to go there.
Yeah, remember, every school you add is another school you're dividing this pot of revenue by. But I think the Oregon football brand speaks for itself. Like that is something if I'm the Big Ten, I would like them to be a part of our party here, because that's a pretty good football brand.
Yeah, and to get into that, kind of own the West Coast then, right? With USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, those are the main brands. I think Stanford could be involved there. But yeah, like is that what the Big Ten manifest destiny is? Like, do they want to go west, or are they going to be more pick and choose here? I'm not sure.
So following up on that, in your opinion, 5 years from now, what will college football look like? How many conferences are we going to have?
The day this was all happening, Joey, I was like, I think the ACC will survive, right? Like, it was kind of my assumption that there's going to be another one that survives here. And then that day, all of a sudden, everybody's talking about like, oh, the ACC is going to be picked apart. The grant of rights doesn't look so good for the ACC right now, especially the programs are going to get out. But I think you're seeing with the Big 12 being aggressive, going after these Pac-12 schools. I think there's room for a third and maybe fourth conference to survive. Maybe it's not the SEC, maybe it's not the Big 10, but if the Big 10 doesn't go after Oregon and Washington, doesn't want them, like I think it makes sense for the Big 12 to swallow them up, or for the Pac-12 to survive as this lesser conference, but still a very good conference, kind of like we see already with the Pac-12. Like the Pac-12 is not a good conference right now. And it's why USC is leaving, but it's still reputable. You can still find a way to get to the college football playoff. You can still make a lot of money doing it. And I still think just because it's harder to get to the, college football playoff, that doesn't mean people stop watching Big 12 football or people stop watching Pac-12 football. Like it still matters regionally. So I'm not sure exactly what it looks like. I think you're going to have the two supreme conferences, obviously, but I do think there's room for at least one other major conference to survive. I just think you're going to see a lot more representation in the college football playoff from SEC and Big 10.
Yeah, I'm exactly with you. I think 3 makes sense, but 4 wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they're just not going to be on the same level as the Big 10 and the SEC. But when we talk about this, like we're talking Power 5, right? Because like, what does this look like for the Conference USAs of the world, the American conferences of the world? Like, obviously, that to me feels like when we talk about this, it's like one AA. And I don't mean to be disparaging to them, but like that they're not.
Doesn't it already? Like, like we're all talking about, like, do the bowls survive? If the bowl system survives, does a lot change? I mean, we're already seeing the same teams get to the college football playoff. I think the biggest thing that would change is Oregon State, Washington State. You might be in the Mountain West now, right? Like, so there's going to be about 15 schools I'd be worried about. Like, I think you're having consolidation among the power conferences, but does a lot change at the end of the day that, hey, Illinois is not competing in the same league as Ohio State, even though they are in the same league? I still think there's haves and have-nots. It's just you happen to be a have-not in a have conference. Like, I don't know if a lot changes other than, consolidation of power, consolidation of resources. And certainly there's going to be some teams left out that maybe fall a level here, Joey, but I don't know if the way we look at the college football, how we crown a champion, is it going to be all that different, other than we're probably going to have an expanded playoff. They're going to make more money on it, and we're going to see a lot of the same teams in the college football playoff.
Yeah, and to your point, if the bowl system stays, it doesn't feel, other than like some power consolidated, like you said, some teams falling, doesn't really feel like much changes there. But it's interesting as we talk about all this. There is still like that other tier of FBS football that I don't really think. I guess I didn't think of in my day-to-day on July 7th, 2021. I'm probably not thinking about them the same time a year later.
But like, what determines success for like a MAC team now? If you get to a bowl game, that's a huge success. If you win your conference championship, like that's the thing. And then maybe every once in 10 years, you get to a BCS or New Year's Six game. Like that's the crowning thing. You're not getting into the college football playoff anyway. So does that change? I don't know if anything changes for that level of school.
Between the SEC and the Big 10, who won the realignment if we just ended it with what's happened so far? So Texas and Oklahoma with the SEC, or USC and UCLA with the Big 10?
It's the SEC, right? I mean, those are two premier football programs. I know Texas has been what Texas has been the last however many years, but they're coming. Arch Manning just changed Texas for the next 4 years. So those are two football brands, like traditional football powerhouses. And when we talk about this, the conversation always comes back to football. Like there's USC's USC, but UCLA isn't one of Texas or Oklahoma. So to me, those two make sense. And also there's still a quote regional footprint there, right? Like if that matters to anyone, it might not, it probably doesn't, but that still exists.
It's interesting. I almost consider, and this is kind of probably crazy to a lot of people, like Texas USC, I feel like is a draw. Because I think USC football has been as good as Texas, if not better than Texas, even through the Clay Helton years. Like Texas has been awful, right? Like for Texas standards. The difference is Austin, Texas is a college football town. LA is not. But LA also comes with a huge market share. I don't know what the Longhorn Network was bringing in for the SEC. So obviously people pay attention to Texas, but both are really good programs, schools, all of that. I think the edge goes to the SEC because Oklahoma is way better in college football, especially than UCLA. But to seize the LA market and get outside of what their footprint is already, which is already a national brand, I think you could argue is a win for the Big Ten there. But I think the SEC is certainly adding two more prominent football programs that ESPN is very, very happy to add to their conference, I would say, which is the ESPN and Fox conferences right now. But I think both are huge coups. I think that's as good of a response that the Big Ten could have, even if it's 80 to 90%. That's a huge response because who thought the Big Ten could do that a year ago, that they could get 80, 90% or 95% of what the SEC just got last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's January 15th, 2025. Ask me the same question when I walk off the beach and into Pauley Pavilion to cover Illinois UCLA. Like, I don't know that my answer is going to be the same that day.
I wouldn't mind going to Austin, Texas here.
Fair.
What's your one big storyline to watch this season for Illinois football?
So Trevor and Joey, I think you guys know one of my least favorite tweets is blank. That's it. That's the tweet. The answer is Barry Lunny Jr. That's it. That's the tweet, right? Like it's that is the biggest storyline. I think of Illinois athletics of this entire year is Barry Lunny Jr. because I know more people are interested in basketball and what the transfers do and what the freshmen do and all that. And can Illinois win another Big Ten championship, which is amazing that we're talking about that. But for the athletic department, Barry Lunny Jr. is the storyline of the year because I think Ryan Walters will have a competitive defense, right? Like, is it as good as last year figures wise? I don't know, but I think it'll be competitive. The only reason Illinois didn't make a bowl game last year was because Tony Peterson and Brett Bielema's offense was not good enough. Brett Bielema makes a change as he should have. And now you bring in Barry Lunny Jr. What can he get out of the quarterbacks? Can he get Isaiah Williams the football? I know fans want Luke Ford to get the football. Can he keep the running game as good as it was last year? Can he just have a competitive middle of the road in the country offense? Illinois should go bowling. And all of a sudden you have interest in Illinois. You're making more money in that sport. And that's good for the athletic program. So Barry Lunny Jr., Joey.
Okay, so my first thing is, if you're listening, tweet at Jeremy. That's it. That's the tweet. And try to bother him. Try to get him at times you think he could be irritable. Check the White Sox score. See where they're at. If they're losing, hit him with that tweet. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Like the obvious answer, Jeremy, is the passing game. Like that's everything that I think held Illinois back. But to be different, even though the answer clearly is the offense, in particular the passing game, is just can Ryan Walters keep this defense to a level that it was last year or improve it, which I think is going to be challenging without Kirby Joseph, without Owen Carney, without Isaiah Gay, without Rod Perry, without Tony Adams. But I think that was such a big jump. If they can maintain that level, that's huge and probably going to be huge for Ryan Walters' next place of employment to show that he can continuously do this or take a step forward here. But if you can get that thing going again, like I actually messaged you, Jeremy. I was writing something in conference play. Illinois had the #1 pass defense, and they had the #3 pass efficiency defense in Big Ten play in the conference. Like that, that's pretty freaking impressive considering for years we watched teams just throw it all over the yard against Illinois with almost no resistance even whatsoever. Now, of course, that all changed after the Virginia game where they got exactly picked apart like that. But what he did with that defense was really impressive. They're starting to get some of their guys in there now. Don't know how soon they'll be ready, but some of them could be. If he can do that again, that's big for Illinois. That's really, really big for Ryan Walters.
I want to do 3 quick other storylines. One, can Isaiah Williams get to 1,000 total yards from scrimmage? I think it's possible. But Illinois had just one receiver over 300 yards last year. Barry Illini had 3 over 750. So that should give you some type of optimism. 2, does the offensive line take a step back? I know the staff is high on this group, right? Like they feel comfortable with this group. They have to prove it. That's still a concern and unknown for me, given all you lost on the offensive line. And 3, Joey, specialists. You lost good kicker, good punter, good long snapper. That matters in close games. And we know Brett Bielema gets in a lot of close games, and those things matter.
I'll throw a 4th in there. Chase Brown, if he goes for 1,000 yards, he is a top 10 rusher in Illinois football history. And we're really almost looking at like just 2 years. The 2019 year, he played for like a half of a second, and he had 500 yards, give or take, in the COVID 2020 year. Chase Brown is still kind of overlooked on a scale outside of Champaign-Urbana, because that kid is really, really, really good at football.
Yeah, Trevor, I'll give you a trivia question. Do you know the running backs at Illinois who've run for 1,000 yards twice in their career? I think
I
there's
need to know this team.
McKell
no. He ran for 734 before he ran for the record, almost 1,700.
I know I got one.
There's 2.
There's
2 guys.
Okay.
And this is just rush yards, right? This isn't
Just
Josh
rushing
Ferguson
yards.
catching screen passes and running.
2 running backs in Illinois history have run for 1,000 yards. One of them did it 3 times, by the way. And
Guess
Red
who I
Grange
have?
is not one of them.
The other one.
Guess one of them, Joey. You know one of them, right?
Yeah, one of them is Robert Holcomb. Robert Holcomb did it 3 times from 95, 96, 97. The second one, I was just looking this up. We're working on, spoiler alert, we're working on our position primers. I was just looking this up.
Former radio guy with Jim Turpin back in the day and Brian Barnhart, Jim Grabowski, who's one of the highest drafted Illini. I think he was number 1 in the AFL draft. But yes, like McKell did not do it. Richard Mendenhall, Pierre Thomas did not do it. Howard Griffith did not do it. Thomas Rooks did not do it. Chase Brown has the chance to do that this year.
What has been your favorite summertime Underwoodism?
This was hard. This was probably the hardest one when you sent out the list, Trevor. And so I'm gonna go recency bias, because I don't want to, like, Austin Hutcherson was here. Like, there's so much hype around him. I feel kind of bad picking him. So I'm still imagining the day that Omar Payne and Kofi Coburn play together, and Omar Payne is hitting mid-range jump shots, which was at least in some capacity a discussion last offseason.
A lot of a discussion. It wasn't just Underwood. It was Jeff Alexander as well. Mine is, if you notice, I know he uses the term elite as much as PJ Fleck in the offseason, but he's always talking about passing. Brad Underwood is obsessed with passing, and he talks about whether it was Mark Smith. Remember, he was calling him Jason Kidd. Matisse Vasil is an elite passer. You're hearing it about Ty Rodgers. You're hearing it about all of the Matthew Meyer. Like, all of these guys are elite passers. Like, he cares more about that. I imagine Brad Underwood just watching John Stockton and Nikola Jokic all day. Like, that's all he does. Like, those 2 players, he just loves passing so dang much. So that's the offseason. That's all he wants to talk about is passing.
I think elite defender also comes up. Like, if passing's a majority, defender's not a far second.
Jeremy took mine with the reminiscent of Jason Kidd line. That's hard to top. No offense to Mark. If you had to pick one, I know fans love this, which Illini football game would you label as this year's big swing game?
See, I know Northwestern always gets the most pub, because it's a lot of times it's like one of those teams could be playing for a bowl game in the very last game. But for me, it's Purdue, and it's always Purdue for me. I've long said I think they're sister schools, like they're basketball schools, an hour and a half apart. They kind of just looking to be competitive and be a solid football program. But Purdue has owned this series. They've won 13 of the last 17, including 5 of the last 6. The one year Illinois beat Purdue, they went to a bowl game in 2019. Remember, the monsoon game, but it was a huge swing game that kind of, after that Wisconsin upset, was like, oh, okay, this team might have something. So they kind of used that game to kind of propel themselves. But Illinois, if they would have won last year, they would have made a bowl game. And I think it's the game you have to win you can put Purdue, Minnesota, Northwestern, and Nebraska. I think those are games you got to win 2 or 3 of those if you're going to have a chance at a bowl game. But for me, it's always Purdue, and I think Illinois matches up pretty well against them with Ryan Walters' defense, with how they throw the ball. They don't run the ball that well. I think it's a good matchup for Illinois. That's why I thought it was such a bad loss for them last year, given what your defense did. And Aiden O'Connell comes in late and is able to marshal them the victory, but your offense failed you that game. So they can't have that happen this year.
Was the 2019 monsoon, was that also the Blake Hayes pylon punt game?
Yeah, Tony Adams pick 6.
That should be, the punt game should be how it's referred to moving forward. Jeremy, I think you and I might have had different definitions of like swing game. I assumed it wasn't so much like a program one-on-one versus just a point in the schedule that could swing where the season is. And for that, I'll say the 6th game against Minnesota. Like that's a big one there, because you'd have your non-conference and you assume they would probably be okay against a Chattanooga, probably against a Wyoming at home. They should probably be favored against Wyoming at home. Let's be honest here. But then Virginia is going to be a tough one. At Indiana is going to be a challenge. So you could go into that game 4-2. You could go into that game. Nope, my math might not be right. You go figure. You go in there 4-2. You could go in there 3-3 because you do have Iowa. You do have Wisconsin at Wisconsin. Those aren't particularly fun and places to be there. But coming out of that, what if you win that game? If you host and you're hosting them, you beat them at their place last year, you could be above 500 after 7 games.
I thought you dominated them last year, right? And listen, PJ, I'm not a fan of all his stuff, but he's been pretty good there. And I thought he just got completely outcoached in that game. And you wonder, I know there's stuff that's come out about some players griping about him, but I think that's a game, again, kind of like Purdue. You got to win those. You got to beat Nebraska. You got to beat Northwestern, Purdue. If you want to take a step as a program, I'm not saying you got to win every one of them, but you got to win a couple of those. So I don't disagree with you, especially the swing of that schedule. Because if you're under 500 after that game or at 500, wherever you would be, that gets really tough. Because you got Michigan
State, Purdue, Michigan. I mean, that could be one where you could maybe feel pretty good coming out of that after 7 games. If you're above 500, that's some momentum to take forward there, especially knowing you're going to come off of a swing at Wisconsin and home against Iowa. That could be both a little bit of a bounce back if it comes down to that, and maybe a kickstart into that second half and a bowl push.
And finally, having just wrapped up the 4th of July holiday, give me your perfect cookout plate.
Jeremy, go ahead, because I'm going to get ridiculed. So let's just save the ridicule for last. Go ahead.
I mean, you know me, I'm a simple man when it comes to these kind of things. So just, I'm a big fried chicken fan, so I wouldn't disagree if someone went there. I get the burger thing, but give me brats, man. Give me a couple brats on the plate, some kind of potato salad or macaroni salad that's a little refreshing. I know Joey hates that because he hates mayonnaise, but I'm going with that. Corn on the cob, grilled preferably, with some butter and salt on the side. I want a little chips. I don't care. I don't need to be fancy. I don't need potatoes cooked up. Just give me some potato chips of some kind and some kind of domestic beer. I'm fine with. So that's it. It's simple for me. Brat, some kind of salad with mayonnaise in it, potato or macaroni, corn on the cob, chips, and a beer.
Okay, first of all, shout out if someone's making pulled pork that they've had on the smoker for 8 to 10 hours. You're the MVP. I think we would all take the pulled pork as the number 1 pick on the cookout plate.
I'm not giving that much effort, Joey. I'm not giving that much effort.
I shout out to my best friend who we Saturday night about 9 o'clock put it on the smoker, 9 p.m. Delicious the next day. It's really an MVP move if you can pull it off.
Who is he? Brett Behrens with his Friday smoker thing that he does?
I don't know. Brett's never invited us over, so it could be. A burger or a brat with just ketchup. Don't need anything more than that. Just ketchup, cheese, obviously, if you're doing a burger. I want nothing to do with potato salad, whatever other macaroni salad, regular salad, none of that. I don't need any of that. Baked beans would be fine. Heavy on, throw some brown sugar in there if you can if you've got it on hand, preferably. Corn on the cob's good. It is a lot of work, especially if you're really drinking. Is like, is it really worth all the effort for corn on the cob? Probably it's fine. Watermelon, a nice juicy piece of watermelon.
Joey getting
And-
fruit. That's the upset of the century.
Yeah, who saw that coming? I'm with you on like chips, like the kitchen cooked chips. Those are just the perfect. I have some. I'm waiting for this to wrap up. I'm going to run through probably the rest of the bag.
What's
And
your
then, yeah,
go-to kettle chip? Do you have like a go-to brand?
Just what's on sale at this point is really the
Old school
go-to.
crunchers. Like that's mine. That's what I grew up on. Crunchers.
So I like some of the baked chips are okay, but the kettle chips are the play. And then a Bud Light, maybe a craft beer if you're having a bunch of food, just to get a cleanse your palate, maybe get a little full, relax, and then start to go a little heavier in the domestic beer.
Yeah.
Trevor, where are you at?
Jeremy nailed that. Just give me a burger. I love potato salad. Sorry, Joey. Any kind of potato salad, pasta salad, macaroni, whatever. And those kettle chips are good. You know, like the colored bags. There's like a jalapeno one. That's good. Like, just give me a little of that. If we're going non-alcoholic, I'd take like a strawberry lemonade too. That works. But
You know a chip that I've gotten into lately that I would have hated 10 years ago. Like I would have been like Joey with anything with flavor in it. The salt and vinegar chips. Like I've gotten into that a little bit. My palate is evolving a little bit, Trev.
I'm
So
not sure I can go as acidic as either the dill pickle or the salt and vinegar yet, but maybe I'll get there.
also I wanted to bring up, what is it about heavy food that feels refreshing? Like the potato macaroni, it's like refreshing, yet it's so heavy. I don't get how that works, Trev.
Very dense yet refreshing. That is true.
I don't get it.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but it's a very good point.
What is the overrated cookout food that if you get there, someone's like, hey, we got this, you're rolling your eyes?
It might be beans for me, if that counts. I'm just not a big like chili bean type of guy.
Probably sweets for me, Joey. Like I don't need a cake. I don't need cookies. I don't need all that. Just give me meat and some carbs. Like I don't need the sugar involved, especially if I'm drinking a beer, which I'm probably gonna be doing at a cookout. So, I mean, I don't know if there's like a meat. Like I'll eat ribs if there's ribs. Like burgers don't get me that excited, but like it's a burger, I'm gonna eat it. So I don't know if there's a meat that you can go wrong with.
It's a grilled meat. It's not overrated.
It's not overrated, but if I go somewhere and they're like, hey, we're grilling up some hot dogs, like you've got to have 35 of those to fully feed people, because if you give me 2 hot dogs, I'm going to be angry. That doesn't move me.
They better not be like the Oscar Mayer brand. Like they better be all beef hot dogs. So that you're right, Joey.
You know they got the package of 50 for a nickel.
Yeah.
And they're going to put them on there and they're going to be horrible and probably burnt. No one wants that. If you're having a cookout, brats, burgers, give me a pork chop type deal, or ideally smoke a piece of meat, man. Get some pulled pork.
That's a good call, Joey.
That's why a brat is an adult hot dog. It's a fancy version of a hot dog, right? So go with the brat.
Do you like the cheddar and jalapeno? Just a standard guy?
Cheddar. Yeah. Give me
I
some
don't
cheddar.
like the cheese in them. There's something weird about that cheese. It doesn't
Okay.
It doesn't seep out correctly. It's like, I don't know.
I can give these shout outs to Bloomington Meats. They have a pineapple brat. They got a little brown sugar in there, or Hawaiian brats, brown sugar, some cheese. Oh man, it's fantastic.
All right, I don't know who won that one, but I don't think either of us were wrong. I think we all got that with the.
That was
with
the
cookout.
most across the board, level-headed, correct food takes we've had yet.
I think all of those things were acceptable. I don't think we should anger anybody with any of those, which we didn't do our job. If that's the case, we got to come up with better questions next time. All right, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to Illini Inquirer podcast and our YouTube channel as always.